Hello, welcome. My name is Ateo, and today we're going to be going over a replay review of VioletHawk. It's the third replay review I'm doing of him. Let's get into it. So I think that player view actually works. Okay. So here we have VioletHawk as our purple player. Speed up this early parts. Alright, 3 mechs and a solar, 2 solars. Good. Okay, this third solar I would say you don't really need before the lab if you're trying to get the lab ASAP, and that way you can utilize that build power from the lab a little bit sooner. Small little detail, but it can be useful. Try to get your stuff out a little bit faster. This converter, I would say you don't really need to have yet. Yeah, you should just be adding on winds at this point, because wind is quite nice on this map. So yeah, even though wind is quite nice, it's not like, it's not crazy good or anything like that. So I don't mind you opening solar, but ideally you want to just keep adding on wind as you go. Let's see, Resbot out eating some metal. Very good. First guy out, or first con out to eat some, or to, sorry, not to eat some metal, but to claim some metal. I will note really quick. So in this position, or I should say just in general for viewers out there, this position is generally the air player. This is generally the tech player. The player over here generally helps support, the front here, because the mountain can be kind of an issue. And this player here is kind of a swing spot where either you do like a T1 support to help push the mountain, or you can do a more economy fast T2 kind of approach. Whoops. I meant to click this button. There we go. Okay, so oh, sorry. I paused there because I wanted to say that this second converter isn't quite useful here. I'd say the first one's kind of okay. Like maybe not at the time that you built it, but like a first one would be okay here if you're really trying to like maximize your wind. But I mean, it's really not that big of a thing. Two here, you can't even really use the first one, so you don't really need to here. It just takes time to build. Whereas I'd prefer you to just keep adding on wind here. And in fact, I would say that moving your commander all the way up here to grab this mechs, while it's good to have the mechs, it's also going to be nice to have the winds, because you're going to need wind to support further economy. So here you have your next bot coming out to make the lab, and you're eating your T1 lab, which is really important to do, so that's good to see. You do have some idle cons here. Ideally, like if you're planning to just grab this max and then come back and maybe supports the T2 lab, so that it gets built faster, I think that'd be good. To me, ideally, you'd have this guy actually building wind out here. This guy could come back to supports building it. The reason being is you're going to need some extra wind and stuff once the lab is done. You don't quite need it right now, but just know that T2 mexes take 10 energy per second. T1 mexes take 3. So these don't take that much, but once you upgrade them, they're going to take a lot more. And just also producing them costs a lot more energy as well. So you're going to need some more energy to support the T2. But yeah, going back to what I was saying about the commander, I think it'd be ideal to have the commander back here building wind, or back here building wind, because you're going to need it, and all that travel time is kind of a long time, whereas this bot could actually do it. So the way that I would set up in this position is I'd have probably my first bot going out to one of these two mexes, and then grabbing the second one right after. So just like queuing that up right away, and then shift queuing him back to base. That way he's, within my field of view, and I know I can just like send him out to do something else or assist a lab or whatever it may be. Second con, I'd have grabbing this mex and then building wind. And then meanwhile, I would just have my commander building wind this whole time. Maybe a couple of converters, like I'd say this, these were a little bit early, but yeah, a couple of converters is okay as well while this is being built. So yeah, right now you have enough wind, or you have enough energy production to support building the lab, but not enough to support the converters, and certainly not enough to support building from this lab, because the T2 constructor also costs a bit of energy, as well as those mexes and grabbing the fusion and all that, and you know it's a lot of energy and stuff that you're going to eventually need. So you're starting to eat your solar here, which is quite good, but you are a little bit low on wind, so I'm not sure if you really can afford to do that at the moment. You're kind of using it, or you're kind of using the energy that they're producing right now. You know, so just not enough wind to really afford taking these away at the moment. So restructuring that a little bit would help you get this T2 faster, is all. Looks like Blue's gonna blow his comm. You decided not to eat the last solar. I mean, clearly you need it, so I mean, that makes sense. It's just, you could have maybe used these other ones still. And ideally you'd just be, you know, building more wind. So your lab's about done. Looks like you were about to blow your comm. Get your first nano. So here your energy, yeah, if you can see, like as soon as you started producing this T2 bot, you don't have enough energy, because it takes a lot more energy per second to produce it. And then, yeah, I mean, yeah, you definitely can blow your comm to get this faster. Just know that that's going to hinder your, you know, metal storage amount. Now, commanders can hold 500 metal, so now you only have 1,000 storage, and that's with the lab. If you decide to eat the lab, which is generally ideal, you know, you're going to be down, because the lab itself has 200 storage. Oh, this is annoying. I'm sorry that this is happening. Don't do this, by the way, if you're other people. This is clearly Purple's commander, and he blew it to get metal, and so if you eat that metal, he does not have it. So that's like, you know, it takes away the whole point. So you're kind of greeding for that metal. Also, looking at your base here, I mean, obviously, I don't know if you're probably not going to see this, but this is a lot of storage. You do not need this storage. You should not be building this much storage. It's just like a waste of money. But yeah, sorry that this happens. That's kind of rough. Obviously, you would have liked to have that metal. At least you got some of it. I guess that's, you know, small silver lining. So here you're starting to eat your lab, which is a good idea. I would say to maybe hold off on eating it, or blow your commander at a different time, because you already have the metal. And if you eat this lab, you're going to overflow. So T2 labs, you know, they cost 2,900 metal, which means you get 2,900 metal back once you reclaim it. And even with the commander and his 500 metal storage, which puts your max metal at 1,500, you can't really, you know, you don't have enough storage to, you know, have all that metal stored. It'll overflow basically. So before you reclaim this, you want to have a metal storage finished, or you know, by the time it's done reclaiming, type of thing. And then yeah, I would also say use that metal from your commander first before you get rid of it. And yeah, this goes back to that whole building more wind thing for more energy for T2. But yeah, you definitely do not have enough energy production here to really support what you're doing or trying to do. So you can't really use your metal because of that. But yeah, ideally at this point, you'd start having two con turrets. You'd have enough energy to do all this, and you'd build a metal storage and eat the lab when you need it. Obviously, right now you have a bit of metal from the commander blowing up. But yeah, your energy's low enough that your mexes are actually going offline, which means not only are you not producing enough energy, you're now not producing metal efficiently either. So this is a very big deal. You see that there's a problem, so you start adding on solar here, which, given that you have some metal, is okay. But ideally, it would have been wind being built this entire time to get you there where you need it, or get your energy to where you need it, I should say. Whoops, didn't mean to pause. Meant to speed up. So here you gifted a con. Let's see, did he pay for it? Okay, he paid a little bit for it. He only paid a little bit less than half. But yeah, it's sort of like because they paid for it, this is okay to do. But generally speaking, you don't really want to give T2 cons out until your mexes are upgraded and stuff. Bit of idle time here, not ideal, but obviously you're microing the transport. Alright, so you're still upgrading this. So you saw that there's an issue. You added on solar here, which is a fine thing to do, but it's just not enough, basically. Like, you're just so far behind on energy that I would actually, if you're in that tight of a squeeze, I'd say, you know, given your energy at the moments, I mean, it's a little bit low to even try to build an advanced solar efficiently. So maybe even a couple more solar and then an advanced solar, and you know, while upgrading your mexes. Because yeah, this is just so dang low. Sorry, I'm gonna try not to harp on that, but that is definitely the biggest takeaway so far in this replay. But yeah, that would, you know, if you had the energy, you'd be able to spend your metal. And eating this makes more sense at that time, and that's the usual thing that you'd want to do. Alright, so upgrading the mexes. Gosh, that energy is just so low. Okay. Now, I'll talk about the right-hand side a bit, because I'm sure they'll probably get... I would think that, you know, if they get pushed, like, they're going to be in trouble, because this player is, you know, doing some weird stuff. Let's see. Trying to add that on. Oh, there we go. So good, you're adding on mexes. Yeah, ideally you'd support it with these constructors, but obviously you'd want at least one back here to help build some of these nanos. Generally this is going to be a lot of nanos, but because your energy's been low, it's been hard to spend the metal that you have, and so you kind of need extra nanos to catch up, or extra construction turrets to catch up. Nice movements of the construction turret. Looks like you're making... Okay, you're starting unit production already, so energy is definitely a huge concern for you. And I would argue to definitely get the fusion first and not produce units yet. I would wait to get... Alright, I'd wait to produce units and get... Yeah, just get the fusion first, because the energy is just such an issue. In fact, your energy is low enough that I think it's going to be a challenge to even build the fusion. I guess here I'll just state what I think is pretty typical. I don't usually play this kind of position. Like I oftentimes you know, load in kind of slowly despite my faster computer, and I don't oftentimes get positions like this. But my suggestion would be to, you know, so basically once you get the T2 lab, and obviously you'd have ideally a lot more wins. You know, you could just stack up wind down here. Like just make a big amount of wind here. So yeah, let's just say for argument's sake you have enough energy because you've been adding on winds with some of those constructors while the T2 lab was going up, and also with your commander while the mexes were being gathered even before the T2 lab. So yeah, you get your T2 constructor, you build a metal storage, you eat the lab, and to get the T2 up, like you might want to blow your comm for that, but it really depends on how your metal's doing, type of thing. But typically that will help get your T2 lab up a little bit faster. But it is also kind of nice to have that build power, so I mean, you don't really have to blow it at that time either. But yeah, so you get your T2 lab, you get your constructor, get the storage, eat the T2 lab to get the metal back, and then excuse me, you'd have enough build power and metal energy, or I'm sorry, enough energy coming in that your metal would be low because you're able to spend it because you have the build power and the energy for it. So you eat the lab to get a chunk of metal back, you know, with the storage, and with that metal you start upgrading your mexes, build a fusion after maybe these 3 mexes in your quad, in your base here. You get a fusion to get your energy, and then you build the lab. And after the fusion, you send your T2 constructor to start getting the other mexes. So rearranging it that way, you have plenty of energy to actually utilize, construction. You have enough build power and energy to, use your metal. And that way, if you do things like eat the lab, it'll help produce some of these other things so you can get more metal sooner. And then after the fusion, you get your lab again to start making units or to start getting constructors to hand out to your team. That's the usual order of things, I believe. Let's see, what units are you producing? So you're producing hounds and sharpshooters. So sharpshooters are very energy expensive. And because of that, they're generally more like a later stage T2 kind of unit. Not only do they take a lot of energy to build, they take energy to shoot. So here at the bottom, I kind of have to hover my mouse here. I can't really point to it, but at the bottom there it says energy/shot 500. So these sharpshooters take 500 energy to shoot each time. And then they also have a cloak ability that would cost more energy if you use the cloak, which is also stated down there. So very expensive, and I would definitely not recommend these until you, at the very least, have 1 fusion. Usually I wouldn't recommend them until you have 2 fusions because they're just so expensive on energy. And then because they take energy per shot, to guarantee that I have enough energy for my snipers, like say I start building some other stuff as well, it's kind of nice to have a storage or 2 for sharpshooters as well, just to help maintain some of the energy, especially when you have a lot of energy coming in from wind and it isn't always consistent, Alright, so here you do start the fusion, but yeah, you're trying to build a fusion and a sniper, and this is just a lot, given that your energy is so dang low. Yeah, in some cases, like if you're really behind on energy, you might even want 2 fusions before getting a sniper. So basically you're slow producing these snipers because you don't have the energy for it. And even if you weren't building the sniper, your energy needs would probably slow this down pretty significantly. So doing both at the same time is definitely a bit of a mistake here. Looks like Red's pushing in on the right-hand side here. Actually got some tanks in here already. Air player trying to do what they can with the shurikens. Yeah, there's gonna be some damage down here. So one of the things that I think is important for all players in any position is to just make notes of where the strong players are and the weak players. So here on the enemy team, well, actually first, as you're loading in, you might want to, before I talk about the enemies here, let's talk about the allied stuff. So when you load in like this, you want to make note where are the strong players at. This is going to be your blue player, your green player, and your teal player. Oops. So this is fairly dispersed, so that's okay. But just make note of like where your weak points are. And you can do that as you're loading in and rearrange where the teammates are to try to even it out. Or you can try to put all your strength on one side, and barrel through somewhere. Once you get some idea of where or which players are spawned where for the enemy team, you might want to note that there's strong players here, there's another strong player here, and there's a strong player playing air. So air is going to be something, that player is probably, well, actually this is the teal player. It's 16 and 20, so like that might be fine. But you do have to consider, or should consider, that there's 2 strong players. Actually, yeah, and you got dark pink back here, by the way. So they're pretty dispersed, but at the same time, they have two strong players playing frontline together. And while you guys have a strong player here in green, it might be rather difficult for green to hold out against two strong players. So it's kind of important that this player here realizes that and helps support so that this side doesn't die. And knowing that these are the strong players, your win, there's more win potential pushing through here and less coming from here, or less for you guys to push up and more for them to push down. So as long as you guys hold here, or don't die on this side, are able to hold the front here, there is that potential down there for you guys. Just something in notes in general. And because of the current situation, this is going to be, the weak side, and you might want to support that side essentially. And it's going to be odd, feel odd because you're all the way in this back corner. That's like as far away as you can be from all that stuff. But that doesn't mean you can't support them in some way down the road. Not that you need to at this point. I just wanted to point that out as a general concept, especially since they're starting to take some damage and now they're going to be hurting. A little bit of BM in chat. I'm going to try to ignore that. But yeah. Yeah, so your energy just really low here. I already talked about all that, so I'm not going to harp on it too much here. Yeah, you even feel the need to add on more solars, which is, yeah, not ideal. Wind's more ideal. But yeah, I mean, even if you did something like pause the factory, this would be able to get up a lot easier. And then you can resume. You did pause there at, later on, but, trying to realize that sooner would help a lot. Alright, so you're starting to produce. Yeah, snipers are quite nice. It's just, they are expensive. Hounds for support is good too. I would just argue maybe do more hounds at this point until you get a second fusion, because your energy is just so low. I mean, you're keeping up reasonably right now. There's that little tiny bit of time between building units, and you're spacing out with hounds, so that kind of also means that you're going to have some excess when you build hounds if you have a second fusion. So it's okay. It's okay. Now here it's getting kind of low because the wind dipped down. Storage would have helped with that, by the way. Storage, good unit. Let's see up here. So yeah, you're just kind of doing some support. I like the fact that, instead of just pushing forward, you are over here. Essentially, you see the need for some defense on this side, and rightfully so. So in a way, you are sending units this way to defend this area, allowing for, these players back here to kind of slide over a little bit and help here. Now I shouldn't really include dark green here because, dark green is doing a fine job holding this, and light green, of course, holding there. So this is a fine choice. I would say that the other choice, yeah, there's a lot of damage on here, so yeah, I think that's a good idea to support where you can over on this side. If the situation wasn't quite as bad on this side, I would say that there's definitely some potential here to push forward. Because, I mean, there's some brown dots. I kind of wish dark or light green was poking up a little bit more, especially because he has all these bulls here. Mausers aren't great in the hill. I mean, they can be great if you can position them between the rocks and fire, downstream. But yeah, bulls are going to be a lot better because they can fire in more directions. I guess just to show the widget that I have helps a lot. So I have a widget that shows the firing angle of units. So if I select something like a medium tank and hit A, I don't see any change because, well, you can fire in all directions. So I can do the same thing with the bull, same thing, all directions. But if I select something like a Mauser and hit A, actually it's kind of hard to see there. Let me see if I can find one that's away from units. Not really, this might be the best option. It's kind of hard to see probably, but there's this dotted line that goes this way. And if you note, there's also a line here, or an arc line here. So this is showing that the Mauser can fire in 180 degrees in front of it, which means it cannot attack behind it. So, it's pretty important for Mausers to face forward if you want them to attack. And that also means they cannot fire it while they're moving backwards. So if anything happens in the mountain, it's hard to get the Mausers out, and so it's just not as good of a spot for Mausers for that reason. But certainly, adding on a couple more bowls and then coming forward, you could probably be able to do some stuff. Especially since this player should know what his opponent has in terms of units on the front. So I assume that they know that there's thugs here, or should know that. And bulls against thugs, like, this is no contest. The bulls should be able to run through this and just destroy this. But certainly, if you had, you could even gift some units out to these players. He doesn't really have the energy to use snipers, but if they did, they could, you could gift some snipers to this player to, and hopefully they'd push forward, type of thing. Yeah. Communication is very important to try to, like, line that stuff up. Like, just giving them snipers, and if they just sit here, like, that's not really going to help anybody. So yeah, just communication is just very important between teammates. Let's go back to your view. Lots of pings because the enemy's getting through over here. They're T1 tanks. There's, friendly T1 tanks here as well, but yeah, Welder's actually gonna be able to help out a lot here as well. So really not too bad. Alright, so now you're adding your second fusion. It looks like you have all your build. Okay, you do have this paused and all your build power assisting the fusion, which I think is very good. And now you're going to be able to crank out those snipers properly. So now metal becomes an issue, and I would say after the first fusion you could actually start reclaiming these solars again, especially after the second fusion. It's just kind of sitting there taking up metal. And so you could potentially have more snipers type of thing, or you could stop sniper production faster or whatever. And then obviously you need some build power to utilize that metal since you stopped production. So here, I think this is a good call. You're pausing your factory, and like I noticed that you added on a second converter at that time. I think that's a good idea because again, the snipers are so energy costly that it doesn't really make sense to have that converter at that time. But now that you're not building them and instead more eco-focused, it does make sense to have the converter. In fact, you could actually have a third converter before this APHIS here. But yeah, then just having enough build power to utilize your metal, of course, to build it efficiently. Yeah, I'd say not quite enough metal here. Or not quite enough build power? Okay, so you are going to add on a few more. Yeah, I'd say you could even go even further with the build power. So one of the things to consider is what are you building with it? If you're just building units, I'd say this is a good amount. With how you're using your metal, it's fine to like slowly drain your metal instead of quickly draining it. But because you're building an APHIS, and after an APHIS you're going to build some converters to go with it, you're going to, that's going to be a lot of extra metal and a lot of extra energy. So you're going to need build power after this anyways. And so to utilize your metal a little bit more, you could add on some more build power now. Just to drain it faster and get this faster, type of thing. Yeah. Yeah, and even okay, yeah. So like I was saying before, like you can eat your lab with the storage to get your mexes and fusion up faster. You can do the same thing with an APHIS. So now that you're not producing units, if you want to, ideally anyway, I think you could eat the lab You know, once again, and you know, you still have that metal storage hopefully, but you eat the lab, you get more build power, and you crank all that metal into this aphis to get it faster. And then afterwards, you just build the lab back. You know, once you have an aphis done and the converters to go with it, once you have the aphis done and the converters to go with it, as well as the build power to go with it, building a T2 lab should be very, very quick and inexpensive in a way. So just a little bit of rearranging I think would go a long way here too. But it's the same concept as before, it's just like eating your lab to get that metal. But obviously you need enough energy and build power to go with it. So yeah, doing a fine job just kind of helping hold the line here. Blue also helping out. And yeah, this lighter blue color should actually just primarily just be over here. Since, you know, everyone in a way, and yeah, so everyone in a way is just kind of shifted over. You're here, blue's here. You know, this white player, or this light blue player could be here with orange, or I'm sorry, here with green against orange. And I think it's fair to communicate that as well. Just kind of say like, hey, I'll help hold here for now. You know, light blue, why don't you go hold over, you know, help hold over here since that's a weak point. Just, you know, talking with people is pretty OP actually. Yeah, blue kind of sending some stuff over there as well. Yeah, you guys are holding all right for now. Alright, so aphis is done. You start up the production once again. The one thing that I would say that you might want to do is add on some radar bots and jammers here. So snipers and hounds and actually like any T2 unit does not have the best line of sight. So if you add on radar, you know, of course they provide that bit of radar. Obviously you guys don't need it. Your radar line's pretty far up there, so that's good. But radar bots and radar in general has more line of sight than most things kind of similar to it in cost anyway. So you know, for example, like even like a T1 static radar has more line of sight than an LLT. So you'd be able to see just a little bit further with it. Now you don't see that, you know, that's not talked about very often because, you know, T1, the scouts have more line of sight than that, so like you want to just go with scouts, and they're cheaper anyway, so why not? With T2, you know, same thing where a T2 static radar has more line of sight than, you know, like, you know, than T2 statics, generally speaking. T2 radar bots have more line of sight than other T2 units. So having that helps, especially in the case that they have jammers. But it also helps so that you know what you're fighting. So it's not just dots, you'd actually see the units. And it would get rid of radar wobble. But it's especially helpful if you're up against jammers where they, you know, you can't even see the units, right? So radar bots are quite nice here. You know, and jammer bots are very good as well. Now, since you're just kind of holding here and blue already has jammers here, it's not really like that necessary. But as soon as you start wanting to push, I would say definitely have a jammer or two with it. It's kind of OP at this level because not a lot of people will be getting Junos. So from the enemy angle, when they see a jammer, I don't know if you've experienced this or not because I haven't seen them in your games, but you know, you don't see any dots, you don't see anything except for the bullets flying at you. You know, so it's kind of like, I don't know, it seems OP in a way, like you just can't even do anything about it. You can't attack back in a way. Obviously you can use manual fire and stuff like that, so like technically can, but yeah, it's kind of annoying. Let's see. Yep, so just add on economy. Blue going pretty ham on that. I would say that while these guys are doing alright holding here, and while you guys are doing alright holding here, you know, like everything's pretty good on the front line. I would think about, you know, and this is really more of a team-wide thing to think about. You know, so again, communication is so important. But one of the things to make note of is you guys are basically down a player. You know, and so if you think about it, you know, it's 8 players potentially ecoing and building units versus 7. You know, so you guys are not in a great place in terms of that. You know, and looking at the fronts and seeing how many dots you see, you know, I don't see any jammers, so I mean you can easily see what's actually out there. You know, you see a lot of orange dots, and a lot of this is probably structures. So like, yeah, there's plenty of winds here, so all those dots are wind. This is probably more wind or something like that, and it's probably generally a lot of winds. But like, you know, there's plenty of stuff to defend on this side. There's not that much here, and then there's quite a few things here, but we know that it's T1. Here we don't really know much at all, but you know, ideally this player would know, and potentially you could scout with some units. But looking at this, I would look at this and say, okay, there's probably plenty of players going eco. And in a situation where it's eco against eco, your team is behind because you're down a player. You have one whole player just not doing anything because they're not here. So that's one less player getting T2 eco going. So knowing that there's a potential that a lot of these guys are going eco, and that you guys are down a player and can't really match their eco because of that, I would say that there's a good potential, seeing that that there's these holes. There's good potential to do more of an aggressive play. And again, talking about the weakness of the other team, you know, they have a lot of stuff on this side. They have plenty of stuff over here, and there's seemingly some weakness here. And seemingly some weakness here with pink because this is all T1. So to me, I see this and see a lot of push potential on this left-hand side. Now, obviously, when you do something like that, you want to communicate with your team, you know, and say like, hey, I think we should be aggressive here, you know, and hopefully, you know, like if that was said in a higher end lobby, you know, and people agreed, then, you know, people would do things like stop making economy for a minute, just produce units, and then, you know, push aside, you know, whatever you guys communicate or whatever. Here, it's going to be hard because not every player is going to know what you mean exactly. But ideally, it would be a case where you and blue just cut out eco, just produce units, and then after a little bit of time, after you have some units banked up, start rolling in down this side, or this, or you know, this side as well. Or that's not an arrow. Let's actually draw an arrow. So yeah, those are your two like main attack forces. This is a gap here, but this is pretty close to where orange is, and orange seemingly has a lot of stuff. You know, and clearly you see some stuff here. So to me, there is definitely some potential, and oftentimes you can catch people like, you know, they're mid building an Aphis or something, and because they're doing that, they don't have as many units, and so then you can just like do attacks like that. Now, in some cases, if you're a really strong player, you can do an attack like that by yourself and do quite well. But in a lot of cases, assuming that the teams are equal and stuff, you know, you're going to want to communicate all that with your team. So that's my little spiel on attacking in this kind of position. Let's speed up a little bit. So yeah, just more snipers and stuff. Oh, I should mention too, if you do an attack like that, you do not need to commit these units. They can also just stay here and help defend this. You know, noting that red does not have a ton here. You know, obviously there's some stuff here, but oh, this is a weird attack angle for dark green here. But yeah, you would want to leave your snipers here to plug this hole, essentially, and just like build new units to attack with. I guess since I noticed this, I'll talk about this a little bit too. So it seems like dark green decided to move up this way to attack. I'm not 100% sure why. It would have been stronger for them to just kind of push in one side here. Especially since light green is also pushing on this side at this time. So pushing up here means that units on this side are going to have trouble reinforcing over here. Whereas pushing along this side, or yeah, like pushing here, just it means you're also fighting red as well as pink. You know, instead of just trying to fight one player, you're like, you know, fighting two players instead. So yeah, cleaning up pretty nicely. Oh, there was a Razorback back there. Yeah, and just so you know about those attacks too, I forgot to mention this as well. There are certain timings for it. You know, like there's going to be a certain time when all of a sudden people show up with T3. You know, so you want to either do that before, or you want to do it after, or you want to do it like when your T3 starts showing up. You don't really want to do it like, you know, willy-nilly type of thing. And that's going to take some practice. I do want to point out really quick, this is a nice setup from green up here. You know, anytime that you can get a transport up here and a builder, you can just put the radar and jammer up here, and then all of a sudden you just see all this stuff. And you have some actual line of sight down here. So, quite nice. And they got some kind of long range thing, probably a plasma. Let's see what it is. Oh, it's a Vanguard, okay. Let's go back to review. Yeah, it's a good spot for Vanguard. So yeah, at this point it's going to be more tricky to push down here because there is some T3 back there. I think I saw 2 Vanguards and you know, there was that Razorback as well. So the window is kind of closed already, so you'd want to do it before this point. Ideally, you want to keep poking a lot, you know, with these units. But yeah, in terms of what VioletHawk is doing, yeah. No, I mean, this is okay. To me, this just feels naked. I mean, there is some jammers back here, but because they're not yours, it feels naked to me. Yeah, your snipers could be pushed up a little bit further to actually like help out with this. Anytime that you have units on the fronts, you kind of want to keep eye on them and try to like maximize their use by just having them attack a lot. Obviously, snipers you don't want to like you know, issue like a fight command and tell them to go up here and then just forget about them. You know, you want to be active with them to try to, you know, use them so they're firing, but stay away from their stuff. But yeah, snipers have some good range, so they could be a little further forward, especially when paired with the jammer again, so that they can't attack you. This is a bit much from dark green here. Yeah, I'm kind of confused because you know, dark green took care of these light pink units, and then just kind of like is still attacking this way. And to me, it would have been a little bit more optimal to try to push it down this line. You know, especially if they coordinated with light green to push again down here. Obviously, again, there's those T3 units and stuff, so that, you know, light green's kind of in a pickle with that. But trying to find a different solution might be useful. Alright, so this anti-nuke. So blue's anti-nuke position's a bit better. You see this like flashing white line, that's like the anti-nuke coverage. So yours, like it primarily covers you in blue, but ideally you'd want to cover as many teammates as possible, and I'd argue try to push it or try to build it out here instead. Or even more ideally closer to blue over here. And if there's 2 anti-nukes in that area, that's fine. You know, there's be double the coverage. Just as it is, like it's still very easy Like if blue's anti-nuke was not here, the coverage that you provide here is just on the like outskirts of green and dark green. So a player could potentially nuke exactly right there, or like right here, and still blow up, you know, those bases. So it just doesn't help them when it could, type of thing. I mean, and obviously if you're like, if nobody has anti-nuke and you like are really worried about it, you know, you just want to get it down ASAP, and I can understand that. But in this case, blue does have an anti-nuke there to help cover. But yeah, if you zoom out, you should be able to see the big white rings of the anti-nuke. So there's an anti-nuke here as well. Actually, it's building two there. Crazy. So yeah, just sniper production. Yeah, to me, ideally, you'd be prioritizing your build power on these converters, so you can actually utilize the energy that you are getting from those APHIS. So yeah, I see that you're adding more support down here, which is okay. I would say that this is like, you have enough here that you could actually like push these forward, more frontal position. You know, that would just allow your teammates to help capture some of these mexes. So it's kind of a big deal because the mexes are just so efficient in terms of metal gathering, so it'll just help out a lot. Next APHIS. I see you got a T2 aircon, which is nice, and it's Cortex, which is even better. So one of the things to note, in case you don't know, is the Cortex APHIS is cheaper on energy than the Armada one. The Armada one is 69,000, and the Cortex one is 48,000. So this is a good call to build the Cortex one. You know, they provide the same amount of energy, so the Cortex one is just better. Yeah, this is all pretty reasonable. And you have a good amount of units out at this time. Oof. Oh, that nuke got off. So at this point, I would say, you know, don't be afraid to switch it up. Like, snipers are good and they can definitely help, and you know, they help a lot against T3 even. So it's fine to have a lot of snipers. There's no problem with that. So what you're doing is fine. But I would say at this point, as a backliner especially, and really for any player, you want to gauge what is going on and try to figure out a win condition. You know, where is your enemy weakest and what can you do about it? Or yeah, what can you do to push a position or make something happen? You know, and in your position, that could mean making bombers. That could mean making T3. You know, that could mean making certain specialized T2 units. You know, maybe you want to switch into Armada vehicle instead. You know, those are all possibilities here now that you have a couple APHISes up. So rebuilding labs and stuff is really, really fast. You know, so don't be too afraid to do that stuff. Here we see a push from, what is this, dark pink. So this becomes a bigger deal on this side. Let's see, do you respond? Okay, so you're sending some snipers over there. Yeah, I'd say it's an appropriate amount. I'd say now that I see these Razorbacks, maybe a few more. But ideally, your reinforcements would be helping with that side now that that's a problem. Getting a little too close there. Yeah, Titans can take a lot of hits even from snipers. That's why I was saying you might want some more to go over there. Blue's doing some nice spam. That's another option, by the way. But it looks like blue has that covered. Spam is just so good in general. Like any map, any situation, spam is usually pretty good. As long as you have the economy to actually support it properly. Yeah, I'd argue here you have enough snipers that this might actually become a problem. So one of the other not perks, but quirks of snipers is you know, their shots get disrupted very easily. Their line of targeting. If any unit is in front of them, they basically can't shoot. And if the snipers are too close together next to each other, they can't shoot either. Which, you know, makes it kind of hard. A lot of these snipers currently would not be able to fire. A, because you have a lot of, you know, units right in front of them, but also because they're so close together. You kind of want to space them out a bit. I don't know how easy it is to see here, but you have like this sniper here that, like, obviously he's in range, but can't fire. You have these three back here that can't fire. You have this guy that can't fire. You have these three back here that can't fire. And then these guys are just starting to get into range, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so even though that these guys are in range, like none of these guys fired. There's only these two on the edge. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal not to clump your snipers up like that, if you can avoid it. Definitely something to be mindful of. Ooh, okay. Well, that's unfortunate. So one of the things is Armada has an anti-nuke in their bot lab. Just FYI, in case you don't know, there is a second page to the Armada bot lab, which has an anti-nuke. So you could, you know, at this, like, by this stage of the game, you know, that can be rather important, because that is a lot of money you just lost there. Anti-nuke, good unit. It doesn't quite have the range of the static version, but you know, it's quite nice to have because it is mobile. So just keeping one with your army is really good to do at this point. Because yeah, I was gonna say you have like kind of enough snipers to actually push pretty hard, but clearly after something like that, they're all gone. So it's kind of rough. Is that a nuke? Kind of an interesting nuke. It doesn't really kill that much. Kind of a rough play from Teal. That's a lot of air. Oof. Yeah, pretty important to scout as your air player, or as the air player. Let's see what else happens this game. Looks like this player left, which is unfortunate. Dark Green was doing a reasonable job. Yeah, so when there's like multiple levers like that, especially, it's like there's an even bigger hole to fill. So ideally you'd spread out your snipers, but you know, you did lose all those snipers. Nothing's really threatening this right now. And there, you know, you guys have a behemoth there, so like it's kind of covered. It's covered well enough for now. This player left as well. Yeah, I would argue that because of the position that you're in, you know, if blue doesn't take this player right away, like to me, blue should take it. But if they're not going to, it's perfectly reasonable for you to, you know, and just make note of what they have and adjust, like, you know, your economy and stuff and plan accordingly. Because to me it makes more sense because you know, you guys are over here type of thing. You know, Teal is doing air, so like they kind of have their hands full, or should have their hands full with that. So it doesn't make as much sense for them to do it, but you know, it's fine that they did as well. And now that there's another lever, you know, someone should take this as well. Yeah, I think Teal feels pressure to try to do something, try to support these behemoths, but there's just so many fighters. Let's see, where are your... Okay, your units are moving in here. They're getting a bit close here. Yeah, usually, like if you're moving things like snipers forward, you know, and potentially they're running into units, I would say, you know, try to use fight command for them. You know, so that once they are in range of an enemy unit, they stop. And then obviously, like enemy units can close that gap, so like you want to be mindful and careful. But I also understand, like at this point in the game, there's so many units out, and it gets hard to like see what you need to do because it's like, oh, which ones are even mine? You know. Not to mention, there's also like usually a lot of lag at this point, and it gets kind of annoying issuing orders and whatnot. So here comes a big play from yellow. I don't think he committed everything, yeah. Yeah, Teal responded appropriately. Very nice train of snipers. Another nuke. Yeah, so that anti-nuke would help a lot. What happens to that? I thought I saw some anti-nukes being built up here. Where even was that? It was probably taken out by a Jug or something like that, or a Titan, but... unfortunate. But yeah, fairly important at this point to try to have anti-nuke with your army, especially once it gets nuked. Now, if it gets nuked once, you can expect they're rebuilding another nuke to nuke you again, so... This stage of the game always feels a little bit messy. And it gets kind of hard to control everything. Mostly because of the lag, but also because there's so many other units on the board. And yeah, you lost a lot of snipers. A reasonable chunk once again, so it gets kind of rough. I would argue that you don't really need hounds at this point. You know, there's plenty of vision. You're not really too worried about like, you know, T2 units sneaking up on you. And you know, while they can be okay against spam, like they're not the best. So I would consider switching it up and starting to get welders here. Welders, by the way, are just nice to have with your army. You know, once you have you know, snipers out to deal with spam, welders do quite nicely against that, and then they can also tank damage from, or they can absorb shots for the snipers. So welders actually have a lot of hit points for their cost. They have basically 3,000 hit points, and they only cost 350 metal. And meanwhile, the sniper is 680 metal, and only have basically 600 hit points. You know, so they cost a lot more and have a lot less hit points. So it's kind of nice to just at least have a couple to you know, absorb any incoming fire. But then, you know, at this stage when spam becomes a bigger thing, welders are also a good anti-spam. So having some additional welders is useful. Yeah, I think there's still push potential here. Again, there's that T3 stuff. But you just have to be really careful with your snipers and make sure you have good vision. So that's where spam would come into play. Spam can provide that vision for you. I mean, at this point with this economy, you could support an air lab just to like have some air scouts coming out just to periodically check the area and like provide that vision for you. So there's that option as well. so teal ended up taking all three, taking both these players, so now they control 3. So there's another lever? What was that? I guess that was just the other player. What's going on? Not sure. Yeah, here you can see how effective that spam is. And of course you got snipers to help out too, so like, you guys are actually making a fine push here. And this is like, I think the normal angle of attack, just because mountain is like, kind of annoying to push in with a lot of forces. Another nuke goes off, so anti-nuke would have been nice, of course. Surprised nobody has one up there. So I think there's a mobile one here. Yeah. So at least there's some coverage here. Okay, so you did end up getting one. Is that one? Wait. Am I seeing things? Yeah, umbrella. And that's you. Okay. Okay, so they have some Thors up here now too. Yeah, once it becomes Thors and Vanguards holding, snipers and things with long range are really what you want. And jammers that go with them. But then you also do need that vision, so like, yeah, spam or air scout. That'd be really the only way to push that location. Not that you guys need to, I just, you know, want to mention that, or keep mentioning that. Yeah, blue's basically gotten all the way down here, or I should say you guys have, you know, it's not just blue. Yeah, I mean, looks like it turned into a win. What is all this? I mean, this is just all jammers and stuff, huh? I think you forgot about them. Yeah, I mean, not much to talk about. The game's just like, you know, finishing up here. Yeah, just all in on snipers. I mean, you certainly have the economy to support T3 if you wanted it. But yeah, you're doing fine just producing T2 as well. It's good support, you know. Like green has the T3 going on, blue has the spam going on, and you got the T2 snipers for support. So that's all fine and dandy. I wish I could speed it up a little faster at this point, but there's just so many units. Yeah, I think I'm gonna cut it here because, yeah, it's pretty much just this until the end probably. So I hope that helped. I hope I didn't talk in too many circles. I did this one more on the fly, so I didn't, you know, I didn't prep like a, you know, some notes or anything for it. So hopefully, hopefully I was concise enough and everything, and I hope you learned something. Anyways, I'll probably see you in the next one. GG's.